Okay. And also I want to say, like, this is a call open for everybody to ask questions to Lily. So it's not just for me to interview you. Wonderful. Okay. So can I hand you to that? Can also, and Bethany is here also.
Hi.
So basically, maybe we can start by just you telling me a little bit about how did you become a chef, and what's your philosophy about behind your cooking.
For me, for sure, this whole story on my whole journey towards food is like a continuous process. It wasn't just like a career decision. I think my foundation of the love for food and cooking was something that I didn't really even realize. It was just a way, my childhood, way that I was brought up to just consider food just the kind of heart and soul of happiness and a family. I've just been brought up that way, especially because we spent a lot of time, my whole life, we spent loads of time in the south of France, in the middle of nowhere in the mountains, and food has just always been the glue between all of the family members, and a really beautiful kind of connection to nature, which is a very big theme still now. So we would grow as much as we could in our own in our own garden, and because we're in the middle of nowhere, any food that we'd buy we'd really appreciate and cherish and use up in any way possible. Even half of it was rotten, we'd really respect where it came from, and it was just a part, cooking together was always just a huge part of my life. There's a real warmth in there, the smell of herbs, being in the herb garden with my grandma, picking it, describing it, foraging, it's always been there. And I didn't really realize how much it kind of determined who I was until later on. I think I just, as a child you take it for granted, but when I got older, I was always cooking, always loving that, always using food and cooking as a kind of therapeutic part of my day, and a way to share my love with my loved ones, kind of express my love for people and care for them. But then when I was a teenager, I got really, really ill, and I noticed that food was a burden as well as a way to heal. So I had these two choices. Food was, if I ate the wrong food, I got really sick. And when I just found things that that made me better, I just realized it was a medicinal choice as well. So I had two choices. Either I would interpret food as a burden, or I could interpret food as a way to feel good and gain strength and heal my body. And that was when I was about 17, and that's kind of when this kind of switch happened, and I wasn't just eating just because I liked eating or just because I liked cooking, but it really became this medium towards happiness. And I realized throughout the years more and more that I could help other people with that. And I think I'm still in that journey, but it's just, food for me is just, it's so much more than just nourishment. It's so much more than just filling your stomach. It's got so much, it's got so many levels to it psychologically, as well as health wise. And I've realized that it's my path towards helping people. Yeah, I could talk about it for hours, but it's a continuous journey. And
Wonderful. I'd like to maybe ask, so for example, what foods that you notice that are healthy? Because I have a sense that, of course, organic food is healthy, probably more plant-based food, but the truth of it is I don't really know. I would, of course, avoid sugars and stuff like that. But if you can, really in a beginner sense, if you can share a bit of your wisdom, that would be great.
5-minute crash course towards health. I mean, for sure, health, it's a concept that's different for everyone. I think the problem is that throughout, it's definitely in the West, we've learnt, we've kind of gone on this kind of detour on kind of not interpreting what's delicious and what's healthy has kind of split. And I think we need to like relearn that. It's not about learning the rules of what's healthy and what's not, and controlling and kind of limiting ourselves with rules and restrictions, but it's actually about our attitude toward food that needs to change to interpret health as something delicious. So the meaning of health, not to be like, oh, vegetables, no meat, or what can I not eat, but to go back to the essence and go back to, okay, what feels good, what looks good, and reinterpret that and relearn our attitude. I think it's the psychological part that actually determines health. But I mean, for me, one of my big discoveries at the moment is the gut health. I mean, that for sure, it's like what nourishes your gut flora, the bacteria in your stomach. That for me is a really big theme at the moment, which is linked to the fermentations, which is linked to as little pesticide as possible, avoiding foods that kill the good bacteria in your stomach, meaning as organic as possible, as local as possible, as seasonal as possible, like just the kind of basic rules like that. But I think health, the kind of concept of it, we kind of need to let go of controlling it, but just kind of open our minds to variation, to be open to new foods and not get too stuck in the comfort of what we've been taught, or because there's definitely a childhood thing that we link ourselves to memory and all those comforting moments of eating cake in the sofa and crisps, because we teach our kids, oh, you use food as a reward, so you give them sweets or you give them chocolate, and we start to learn that comfort is like linked to unhealthy things. And I think we need to like relearn that healthy just means good quality food and cooking with fresh ingredients and just really basic stuff like that, and not controlled by a diet.
Thank you so much. I want to give a moment of an opportunity for other people to maybe ask you some questions.
Yeah, I'd love that.
But maybe Lily or Eva or Lisanne or Bethany.
It's your moment now to ask me.
There'll be other opportunities, but maybe people are like listening while they're doing other things.
I'll put my video on, by the way.
Hi.
Hi. Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay. So is it like a Q&A today, or is it
a bit of a Q&A? So this first call, Lily will get to have lots of Q&A with her, and the two next calls we'll actually have a cooking class.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, for the moment, I don't have any questions yet. Yeah, no, it was really clear. It's like a nice philosophy that you have. That's why I'm in this course as
Thank
well.
you.
So.
I'll continue then asking her question. If there's any moment that you'd like to ask a question, then just put your hand up.
Yeah. Shoot anything, even if it's a stupid detail. Like, there's no stupid questions. It can be like a big kind of philosophical question, but it can also be like a weird detail of something you've been wondering for a while. So feel free to shoot.
Okay.
So, can you explain to me, for example, you said like try new things that you wouldn't usually try. Can you maybe give us something that you tried that usually you didn't use, and you found that was really useful in your cooking for, I don't know, like. Yes, I'd like, because I struggle to get out of my comfort zone.
Yeah, sure.
Have a sense of like, what are some ingredients or things that you've started using that you found really inspiring?
I mean, I think for me, a big theme for me is also like mindful eating. Meaning like you use all your senses and you really like connect to your body and your environment, and I think opening your eyes and your heart and your taste buds to, for example, play around with herbs and spices is a really big one, because anyway, like herbs and spices are a huge source of all kinds of vitamins we need, amazing for our immune system, amazing source of vitamins and minerals, and without having to like think about like the science behind it, just using spices and herbs is amazing for our bodies just nutritionally, but it's also incredible for all the senses, the smells and the flavors, the look of it. So I really always try and like trigger inspiration on the use of spices and herbs. And I know people really get stuck in like certain recipes or certain connections between a herb and an ingredient. So they'll be like, my mum always cooked tarragon with chicken. So you're like, you don't consider tarragon a separate herb to play around with. You just connect those two together. And I think it's a really fun initial step to dare to play around with the combinations of herbs and spices. Because once you've kind of got that, once you've kind of opened your mind to that, you can then just go with the seasons and kind of ingredients that you discover on a market and dare to give them new flavors using spices and herbs. So I think that's a big thing of just like allowing yourself to taste and make new connections between flavors, and trust that process. Yeah.
Thank you. I guess like maybe behind, like in my question, like I remember, so Lilly came and cooked for us once, and I also saw that you were someone who really liked to play with texture. Like I remember just very with texture. Like I remember you did that French pancake, but you added those kind of like almond that you roasted.
Oh yeah.
And so do you have, like, I just saw that for you, like to kind of add like roasting things, just add texture, like for me, like what I like is certain, maybe if you can turn me certain like principles that you tend to use to kind of bring things alive, so that it's not all like, you know, like I think the beauty of it is when playing with contrast, like acid with sweet or salt with something.
Absolutely.
And so kind of like if you can explain to us kind of maybe certain principle that can help us like improvise or try things out.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard trying to like I've got so much to say about it. I'm kind of like trying to construct my sentences here. I think, I mean, if you just, I mean, it's all senses, right? So anyway, texture wise, it's about the soft with the smooth, with the tingly, with the fresh. You're connected to like the 4 elements as well, like fire, earth, wind. They all have every ingredient has their own kind of story. And I think the more you get into the texture, the flavor, the look of every ingredient, the more you can have fun with the combinations. I definitely focus on a plate. It's, for me, of course, I'm always aware of the nutritional side, meaning, you know, you have your greens, you have your proteins, you have your grains, your fibers, and your vegetables. Like that's definitely the balance between those. But I think it's to like start playing around. I really like focusing on the sauces. If you have just a really good sauce based on one, for example, one vegetable, like tomato sauce or like beetroot sauce, then you can play around with any kind of grain, which is another texture to a kind of smooth sauce. And then I always add a topping, so it'll always be a crunch of some sort. So then already you've got really quick fix kind of set up to improvise a meal without being stuck to that's one dish. You know, people like naming a dish, you know, that's a lasagna. But to actually just go, okay, I've got a really nice grain, let's say lentils, and I've made an amazing tomato sauce, that's that. But then you need a little bit of crunch in there, and then I'll add like some roasted nuts or popped seeds or something like that, or a savory granola. So I think it's fun to like dare to just layer up and just create a bowl or a plate of food. Whereas, you know, with a lasagna, you've got the layers, you've got the fun of the colors, stuff like that, but you don't think about the sensation, the sensory part of it. And I think if we're improvising meals or letting go of our rituals and what we know, you have to go back to the essence, which is like, okay, what can I see, what can I taste, what can I smell, and then playing around definitely with like the sweet, the sour, the bitter, the salty. Yeah.
That was really useful actually for me to be like, oh, like I think I often don't make that much sauce, and it's like, oh, actually, like to have a key ingredient, a tomato sauce or beetroot sauce, or I guess I can then like go try, but like, and then the grain, like I was like, oh, I don't really know what like a grain, like, so that was a kind of good principle that I'm like, oh, I can go try that on.
Yeah, the fun thing about starting with a sauce also is that if you have a sauce, you can easily use part of that sauce to make a dip just by blending it with some chickpeas, for example, or you can use it as the base flavor to make a soup, or you can make a stew using it. So you can, I really like helping people like with shortcuts, because there's a lot of pressure on that thing of, okay, so you come home after a long day's work and you've got your kids to feed, your family, whatever. And okay, so you get your recipe book, you have to look for a recipe, you find one, then you have to find those ingredients, go to the shop, come back home, start weighing everything. Like there's so much pressures in learning new recipes that I try and like kind of inspire to let go of these fixed rules of weight and fixed recipes, but actually try and break that open a bit and just kind of create a little bit of liberation of kind of fluidity, of improvisation, and trusting your kind of instinct and using your senses to do that. And a sauce, for example, the focus on a sauce is always like a really nice way to start, because you just get any grain and any sauce, and then you can, the grains you have in your cupboard already, they last for ages. A sauce you can put in the fridge and have for a whole week, and then you can actually use a sauce to make lots of different dishes, and it's a kind of easy shortcut to be able to improvise other meals in one go, if this makes sense. I mean, I need to do the practical side to structure it.
That's very, very great. I guess like then the question is like, what is the basis for a good sauce then?
Yeah, I can definitely share. I've made a kind of visual graphic thing of this, so I could share that with everyone who joins. But there are definitely like the basics, for example, of umami flavors that just kind of bind flavors in general. You've got garlic and onion are great ones just to play around, just as one of the main ingredients. You need one ingredient like a protein or something that binds, that like creates a thickness, creates texture. So that could be like kidney beans, or a certain vegetable with a lot of starch like carrot or celeriac or whatever, like something that when you cook it and blend it, it creates like it binds and creates texture. Then you've got the spices and herbs. And then you've got a certain oil or a liquid. So I use, I play around different oils, but great olive oil is just an absolute necessity. And I use oat milk a lot to create liquidity. So it's just, so you need something that binds, you need the flavor, like the power of flavor, which you do with herbs and spices. And acidity is also a really good one. So using a balsamic or any kind of vinegar or citrus is another great one to play around with. So I mean, I think we need to learn to let go of specific titles of labeling everything, and just start with one ingredient and dare to add and taste. That's why I love plant-based cooking as well, because you can always taste in the process and actually taste what it is. Whereas with meat or something, you need to leave it in the oven for an hour before you can test the result. Whereas with vegan cooking, you can test and adapt straight away.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Yeah, I really like how you're like kind of getting the principle. Like, I'm so happy I'm recording the call, and I will put the call up for people who didn't get to like capture everything, and we can take notes again.
Yeah, might have to restructure it again.
She's so fast. She's so, I want to maybe pause again and give a moment for people if they'd like to kind of ask a question.
I wonder whether you could like tell me your 10 favorite ingredients to make whatever, not just a sauce, and not like something that's always in your fridge. It doesn't have to be special vegan, but just like the basic vegetable or something you always have in your house. What would that be? Like your top 10?
Great question.
Yeah, really good question. I'm just turning off. I have a slight addiction to tahini.
Oh yeah.
That is for me just a magic ingredient. One, because it's extremely nutritious. It's like 1 tablespoon of tahini is the same amount of calcium as a whole glass of milk. It's got just loads of vitamins in it anyway, but it's also just such a powerful, because it's mainly protein, it binds beautifully. So it's great for making a really powerful dip, which I love because I love snacking. But it's also binds like a sauce. It creates this like kind of, a beautiful texture. So I literally put tahini in everything, and I just love the flavor of it. So just a bit of tahini and some garlic and some salt, and you've already got like delicious flavor to play around with. So tahini definitely for me is a big one, especially in a vegan cooking. Like if you're not using eggs, tahini creates a really nice kind of texture when cooking. So that's definitely one. I love my spices. Because I cook really locally, or as local as possible and as seasonal as possible. But then the spices and the herbs are something that I really play around with from the whole world, like collect them from all over. And so like my favorite spices are things that are slightly atypical. So it'd be like sumac, which is a kind of berry. It's like sour sweetness to it. It's really healthy as well, but it creates this beautiful power of flavor. Za'atar is another great one, which is like a mix of thyme, dried mint, oregano, sesame, stuff like that. Ras el hanout, which is, it's like, I don't know where it originated from, but it's like Moroccan spice. Which again, it just hasn't, so I really like, once you've got a few good spices, you can just add it to anything and you've really got this kind of popping flavor, which I love. A good of olive oil, because olive oil can taste so good on its own already, and it just is a brilliant medium to, well, it binds flavors, it's really, really healthy, and it's just so easy to create flavor with, and it is one of the ingredients that the more I learn about gut health and all that stuff, that just keeps kind of coming back. Good salt, definitely. Once you step away from the normal kind of table salt that's just processed 100,000 times, bleached and all that, once you've gone to good salt, you will never go back.
What do you mean by good salt? Define.
Like Himalayan salt, like the pink salt, unrefined. Sea salt, just great sea salt, like the proper grain stuff, like that you can see the texture of it, but not completely fine and white. If it's white, you're already going the wrong direction. You want it to be slightly gray, or slightly wet, like you can tell it kind of sticks a little bit to itself, like that's a good sign. Or like Himalayan salt. There's also great stuff like lava salt, which is black, has a lovely flavor to it, so there's some interesting things to find. But Himalayan salt for me, that's my go-to. It just changes everything, and it's just also a mineral that actually is really healthy as well. Just table salt has no health benefits to it. I actually wrote an article for a magazine recently saying what you should have in your pantry. I'm just going to take that and just have a quick... in the vegan industry, of course. So we've got tahini, but any kind of nut butter is great, like almond butter, hazelnut butter, cashew. They're just great flavors to play with, really healthy. And again, just they straight away give this boost to any dish. Salad dressing, as well as like just if you have your like leftovers of a previous meal, just add some nut butter and it's straight, you mix it around, it's straight got this kind of creaminess to it, which I love. Capers is another one, I think. Is capers, capricious, because in, for example, the Italian cuisine, you often use I've completely blanked, the really salty fish.
Anchovies,
thank you. I completely blanked. It has a kind of umami flavor, because it's like that saltiness, that fishiness. Even if you don't know it's got it in it, it's already creating a lot of flavor in sauces and stuff. And I use capers a lot in a lot of my sauces. It just has this really special effect. And then garlic. Good garlic, like the purple, like proper, like French garlic, just use as much as you can of it. That I think it's a magic ingredient health wise as well, but just I think it just creates such powerful flavors. That's definitely another one for me. And then of course for baking, depending on what you're making, but linseed is a real egg replacement that I use frequently. And
so linseed with water?
Yeah, so a tablespoon of linseed with 2 tablespoons of water, and you leave that for about 5 minutes. Broken linseed.
Yeah, obviously.
It's just really useful to replace eggs, depending on which dish, but baking especially.
Cake, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And the same for chickpea flour. I use a lot for different things. It's great for if you're doing like fried foods. If instead of a layer of egg, you do a layer of water mixed with chickpea flour. You can also make vegan omelets, which sounds absolutely ridiculous because an omelet is just egg, but you can use chickpea flour to create this lovely thick batter that has this omelet like effect. So I use chickpea flour frequently, as well as oats. I use oats a lot, a lot, because when you grind it, blend it, it turns into a flour, and especially in baking, it has a slightly, creates a lot of texture, keeps things together. It's a certain kind of glue, but it also just never goes off, and you just have it in your cupboard. You can use it for so many different things. So I use oatmeal a lot. That's another one. I don't know how many I've said so far.
I guess those are 10. But great, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's such a good question and so concrete. I'm like, oh my God, my brain is opening up. Try. I guess now I have a question really for crème fraîche lovers or butter lovers.
Which would be you.
I keep crème fraîche and butter almost in everything, and that's really my barrier to becoming more plant-based or vegan. As I just don't know how to cook without it. So I was like, what are good things to replace them with?
Definitely for me, I mean, I use oat milk, but there's when you fight, for example, I keep trying new brands, but the Oatly is definitely my favorite, but they have a barista version, which means it's made to foam up for cappuccinos and stuff, but it's got so much kind of creaminess to it. It's wonderful for adding to sauces or however you use your cream, and doesn't split, and because it's oat, it doesn't have a sweet, it's like sweet or savory. It can go both directions. You can just get soy cream, but I try to avoid soy because it's, rainforest and health-wise, like too much soy isn't great. So I try and stay as local as possible, and ecologically, for example, oat is much more sustainable than soy or almond. So I use a lot of almond milk, oat milk. And tahini, as I said, tahini is a really great one if you're using, like, you use butter for and like cream as a combination. A little bit of olive oil or coconut oil is a great one, again, also health wise. But coconut oil in combination with tahini has that creaminess and that fattiness that you're looking for, but your body just absorbs it in a completely different way. It nourishes your body in the right way. It gets the fibers right down your whole system rather than using up really quickly, and then you get this blood sugar crash afterwards. So it makes you feel satisfied for longer, which is also an advantage. I think that would be my top tip. And lots of people make cream, sour cream, as well, out of cashew, which is a fun one. You just soak cashews overnight and then you blend it with a little bit of salt and nutritional yeast. Nutritional yeast is another ingredient that I would really advise if you're in the vegan kitchen. It has an umami cheesy effect to add to sauces. So I sprinkle that in a lot of my stuff as well when I'm going for that comfort cheesy flavor. But yeah, so people use cashew a lot, but I again try and avoid that because I try and stay as local as possible. And you know, you can be an unhealthy vegan as well. If you just live off soy, avocado, cashew and dates, your body is going to freak out. And I really try and show that we can be vegan or plant-based. I find vegan quite a kind of a label. Plant-based is just the fact that we can all be plant-based just with the stuff around us. I think it's quite an important one ecologically as well. Yeah, so oat milk and tahini is my top tip. Oh, and also if you have like, again, so to go back to that use of like, if you have a good sauce, how you can make a soup out of it or a dip or a stew. If you have leftover hummus or you just have blended chickpeas, just adding a few tablespoons of hummus to a sauce really adds thickness. So that's a good way, also a zero waste. If you just have a little bit of hummus left and you're cooking and you just chuck it in, and it creates a real nice creaminess as well. So that's a nice way to use up.
Oh, wow. I just can't wait to get in the kitchen now.
I wish I could just jump through my screen and start playing around with what you have in your cupboard. I love that, just like improvising with what you have, you know.
Does someone else have a question?
The only thing that I'm thinking is if you use tahini or other flavors or hummus into your sauce, I think they have like a specific kind of tastes. And if you're like making something completely different, doesn't it ruin up your like meal?
Well, of course, if your hummus has loads of spices in it, it'll be different than if you just have a very simple hummus, like the plain hummus, which actually is tahini, lemon, salt, and chickpeas. It actually, when you add it to any other like vegetables and oils, it kind of absorbs those flavors. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. Tahini depends which kind of tahini you have. You have really light creamy ones which doesn't have like the husk of the sesame, so that's like really light, and that's the one that I use the most. But some brands, you can tell if it's really dark and it looks really grainy, that has a much more nutty flavor, so that will shine through. But you can counteract certain flavors, like lemon juice really counteracts the flavor of the sesame, for example. So the nuttiness that you get with tahini, for example, you counteract with something fresh and acidic. And that's the kind of stuff you learn to play with. Balsamic vinegar is another one that I use a lot to kind of counteract earthy flavors. Red wine is a wonderful, that is, you know, and that's in the French cuisine, is something you can keep using. A splash of red wine really brings out new flavors and counteracts things that might straight away taste like too Indian or too Moroccan, or if you're cooking with local flavors, it's nice to use a few local powerful ingredients, like powerful flavors, like a vinegar or a wine, for example, and then a tablespoon of tahini or hummus won't make the difference. And of course, fresh herbs. People are really like, a little sprinkle of, and I'm like, no, just like throw it in, like use a hand. Like when I write recipes, I try not to use that many grams of, I just say a shot of, or a handful of. And especially with fresh herbs, like you use a handful of parsley, not just 3 leaves, just like throw it in, and dare to play with like powerful flavors. Don't do 1 like clove of garlic, put like a whole head of garlic in your sauce. And it sounds really extreme, but then you get these like strong flavors that you really stand out, and then you can work with. Otherwise, all your dishes, especially if you improvise, will all start tasting the same, because you go a little bit of that, a little bit of that, and then it'll all become like one flavor. So if you've got a little bit of tahini, you just add like loads of parsley or loads of coriander, and dare to play around with the extremes of other flavors.
Thank you.
Welcome.
That was actually a really good one, because I was like, oh yeah, sometimes vegan food just feels like a bit plain, or I like also here at the Asherai, none, like we have Christophe fun, but I also noticed that they tend to put lots of herb, like they really go for it. And like that really kind of ring the bell. It's like, sometimes same with garlic. I've always been a bit like, oh, 2-3 cloves. But I really notice that when things really start shifting is when I kind of, I'm generous with it.
Yeah, gutsy. Yeah, I think there's also this thing of the moment you go vegan, that you're trying to like replace meat or something, or replace, and then people like feel like they're missing something. Whereas if you're working with local seasonal ingredients and put your focus on, for example, let's say a butternut squash, and just use that as your focus point, and learn to taste and go with what fits that butternut squash, and not try and be like, I'm trying to create meatballs that taste like meat. No, just create a great flavor that fits the butternut squash, and don't worry about what you're missing, but create things that are new and distract yourself from what you're not having, and just focus on what you are having and what you're adding, and not what you're taking away. I think that's a really big thing. So like you know, a meat is a specific kind of texture and flavor, and we're used to go, okay, meat, and then that's the focus, and then you just add some potatoes and salad. Obviously, if you just say, I'm not eating meat, and you just have the potato and salad on your plate, you're like, this is really boring. So I think it's really important to like have fun with what you're using, and not like just be like, oh, I miss my meat, you know. Yeah.
For that tip, because I've been really craving for meat actually recently. I've been so that
mushrooms is if you're craving meat, getting your focus on mushrooms, because the fibers, the protein fibers of mushrooms are the most similar to meat. So if you're really feeling that, and then add loads of spinach or one of these dark green leaves that's got loads of iron, and that is probably what you're craving, is the iron. So texture wise, go for like oyster mushrooms, and then add again tahini and mushrooms and spinach are going to be the ingredients that will give you that satisfaction. And add a shot of red wine to a sauce will also give you a lot of kind of feed that need for meat.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Really amazing tips. Other questions?
Yeah. Do you ever buy processed falafels? You know, the ones you can buy in the veggie department from the fridge, from the supermarket, but already made in advance? Or do you always make the meat replacement, the replacer of meat yourself from scratch?
Yeah, I mean, I'm extreme in that. I cook everything from scratch. So literally, my freezer, I only have like green peas. And then the rest, it's all just fresh stuff. I because I just love the process of creating something. But I'm a purist in that. I mean, I'm definitely pro vegan meatballs, vegan burgers, falafel, that kind of stuff, because it makes people's lives easier. Not everyone wants to start from scratch, but I really like the process of cooking and that kind of mindful therapeutic part of it, and the cooking part from scratch is a big part of that. So I will definitely enjoy bought falafel, but it doesn't give me that like deep satisfaction that I've created. But that's also because I'm extreme, because I'm always creating new recipes. So if I am eating something that is processed in some way, I'll always be like analyzing it, like what's in this, and like trying to understand the recipe. But no, I can't actually remember the last time I bought something that was ready made.
So regarding biscuits and cookies and chocolates, you don't buy it to eat yourself? You just make your own cookies?
Normally, yes. I mean, I definitely, thing is that I don't eat that stuff also because I have leaky gut syndrome. And again, that's going to the really detailed scientific stuff that I love as well, which is like the gut bacteria and the gut flora, and preservatives and anything that's kind of processed agitates my gut. So I am specifically very sensitive to that. But if I avoid that stuff, just not because I tell myself no, don't touch it, but just because I enjoy the things that I do. So I don't reach for the biscuits because I love making biscuits and I have biscuits, and then so I'll avoid it for like 3 weeks or whatever. And then if I buy biscuits, I buy biscuits, and then I'm like binge eating, and I'm eating crisps and biscuits and crackers and everything at the same time, and I completely overdo it. I feel really sick, and then I'm just like, okay, well, that was that. And then I've kind of got over that need for that kind of sugar and call it, empty carbs, just like,
but you're still human then. Good to know.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. And I think that's really important. Like, I think that's a big part of my passion for being a chef. Is I love it when I can like be like, here's a brownie, and then being able to go like, oh, by the way, everything in that is good for you, and just like enjoy that brownie. I really find it is such a shame that there's so much guilt and anxiety linked to food, and constantly focusing on what's not good and what is, all these kind of rules that we're and like resisting temptation. I'm like, go for that. If you want something, don't resist it, just go for it and really enjoy it, but don't not eat it. And then if you eat it, feel guilty, because that's a lose-lose situation. If you're going to go for it, just really enjoy it, and then get over it, and then leave your body to process it and get it out of its system. But a little bit every day, I think, is much worse for your body, getting used to it, getting addicted, rather than just not eating it. And then if you eat it, go big and go all out. And then you kind of had enough of it and don't want to touch it for a few weeks. That's my way of doing it. Yeah. And mainly when I have my periods is when I then binge eat. Yeah.
By the way, I assume you already read the book, but just in case you haven't, the book of Julia Enders. Because you say you're very interested by the gut and the link with the brain and blah blah. I don't know if you know about the book. It's
I've read it. I'll write it down. Julia Randers.
Actually, it's a German book, and it's written in English as well, and in Dutch is De Mooie Voedselmachine.
Oh no, I haven't read that one.
No, it's really famous regarding the gut and everything about the science behind it. It's a bestseller, translated in so many languages.
Ah, look it up.
Could be, and Julia's it's Giulia, and then Enders, Enders. For you, in case you're interested.
There's always more to read. It's absurd. Like, I look at my bookshelves, it's all about wild food, foraging, herbalism, and then it's all like gut stuff. It really sounds unsexy, but it's a fascinating world. So I'm always open for new authors, and yeah, it's an endless process of learning. So thank you for that tip.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I found what you said extremely useful, actually, Lilly, because I noticed that like I recently developed a little bit of a habit of like a little bit of bad food every day, but then I'm never feeling really satisfied about it.
Yeah.
Like, because
a little bit guilty, still actually wanting a bit more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like I really, and actually also similar to meat, like yeah, I guess I have a question of what's your relationship with meat?
That's also been a process. Like, when I have a love for meat in the way that I really, again, it's linked to my childhood. Like, we always ate quality meat, but it was always this beautiful, especially the barbecue in France, like eating out, and then just it was always like a really comforting moment. And so I do link meat eating still to that enjoyment and the childhood warmth from my grandparents, my family. But throughout the years, I've got more and more into, well, the ecological side and the ethical side, not just health. And it's not that I would never touch meat again. It does actually still happen that I might eat some meat, but it really has to just be from the best background, like, has to be as happy as possible, as right as possible. And if it's really, it's natural like that, then I can, then it's in balance. If you all focus on just trying to eat as good a quality as possible and leave out all the shit, then maybe you eat meat once a month and then really enjoy it and really appreciate from where it comes. Then we're balancing out that consumption more. I don't think it helps people to say never again, because it just makes you feel limited and like stuck in a cage of like, hey, never, don't touch it, don't look. And I think it's really important just relax and just make it part of your lifestyle rather than like a diet, like with restrictions. So for me, I'm like, there are vegans that really go into extreme and like shun people that like, you eat meat, and spread hatred and like pressurize people that do eat meat. I'm not completely against it, although the longer that I'm in this kind of plant-based world, the more I look for that idyllic, only the meat that's the best, and actually never happens. Like I never come across that meat anymore, so I don't eat meat. But it's not because I feel like I'm limiting myself. It's just that I only want to eat quality. And then more and more the ethics around it become more of a thing, because the more connected you feel to nature, the more you get into this kind of plant-based world. Even if it's a tiny baby step of just a little less or a little more vegetables, the more you kind of get that kind of poetic side of it, the more you feel kind of connected and you feel one with nature. And that's also why I find the beauty of seasonal and local eating and cooking, is that you feel more and more connected to what's going on around you. And then just meat eating starts to feel a bit wrong in a way, because you don't see those animals, you don't know where they're from. So yeah, it started for me like I never buy meat in a supermarket. Just that I just can't buy meat, and it's just nothing from an animal, because it just feels so wrong to me. And then it's just evolved into basically never.
Which stores do you go to? Like, do you have a favorite store? And if so, is it your bio farm next to your house, or more like a brand, like, I don't know, Deleuze or Farm or whatever?
I mean, I definitely get the most satisfaction out of a good market, or like going straight to the farmer. That is what I enjoy the most. But day-to-day basis, it's not really possible to always do that. So I really enjoy the personal connection. So I actually really love going to like the little Turkish, Moroccan stores, because people then get to know you. I was invited recently to the store, a Turkish shop that I shop at a lot, to the store manager's wedding. I chat to people and I love that. And in a normal supermarket, you just don't get it. They're just like beeping your ingredients and there's no personal connection. So I love the kind of, I definitely get more satisfaction out of the zero packaging, zero waste shops, organic stores, because it just feels more natural. It feels more connected to the environment. It feels more respectful. It feels more natural, more real. And definitely a big part of again, my kind of path within food and cooking is trying to like disconnect people from the marketing, the kind of capitalism around food, because there's so much brainwashing and like convincing and like branding. The branding on food is just crazy. And I love going to these kind of zero waste, zero packaging shops, because it's just all kind of really peaceful, just browns and beige and really peaceful, pure ingredients. And I think that's a big influence on how I feel when I'm buying ingredients, seeing as I always improvise.
Thank you so much, Lilly. That was really useful. Anyone else has a question?
I had maybe a question. When I ate something savory and after dinner, I'm always craving something sweet. And then it's really hard. And then like I want ice cream or anything. And that, like, what would you eat? Like, if you don't have time to bake cookies yourself, what do you do?
I definitely love yogurt, plant-based yogurts, and then playing around with flavors. I love honey. It's not officially vegan, but good local honey. So that is something that will be my sweetness, and it's really quick to do something with. I love blending frozen bananas, they call it nice cream is the kind of term. So playing around with that with like coconut milk and stuff like that. It's delicious, a quick kind of ice cream fix with melted dark chocolate. Yes. Chocolate is definitely a big one for me, but I eat like 90% or sometimes even 100% cocoa, or make a really good, again, vegan hot chocolate for me is an absolute comfort. So that's a real thing for me that you know, just in a blender. So I could send you the recipe if you want, but just making a healthy with pure cocoa powder and hot chocolate. Again, I sometimes add then tahini and anything kind of a nut butter, make it creamy, and you blend it up and it just becomes this like really comforting, you feel you're getting the sweetness, but you're not like giving yourself like another sugar rush before bed. And I love making popcorn. That for me is a really fun one, savory or sweet. So just because then you make volume and you can like crunch, and if you really want that kind of stuff your mouth kind of satisfaction, popcorn's a really good one.
What's your opinion about popcorn and rice waffles and corn waffles? Because I know they're low in carbs and whatever, and they don't have a lot of calories. But on the other hand, they have a high glycemic index.
Yeah.
So what's your opinion? Because some say, oh, it's super healthy, it doesn't have any calories, and others say, no, it's not healthy at all because your insulin will increase, blah blah blah. What's your opinion? Just
yeah, I mean, it's a very good question, because the more I get in, of course, into the science behind gut health and how food influences our mood and our blood sugar level and our hormones, obviously this insulin effect that maize and empty carbs, they say, like white rice has, it is in the back of your mind, but I think a little bit of everything is just a really good kind of rule to live by, and living by restrictions just has worse effects on your mental kind of health, on what, you know, the anxiety around restriction, rather than just be like, have a rice waffle every now and then. It is really okay, but variation is crucial. So don't eat maize or corn every day. Play around with different types of grains, play around, just, you know, variety, and then you know you're getting a little bit of everything, even if a little bit might be bad for certain reasons. I mean, even tomato, it's great against, it helps you protect against sunburn, and it's great for your immunity, but actually it's really bad for people with arthritis. So like even a healthy ingredient, it's not always a holy ingredient, so just a bit of everything, and then you know you're kind of covered. So I love rice waffles, I love it, but I just don't eat it every day, say as popcorn. By the way, another great tip for a quick snack, especially after dinner, is popping pumpkin seeds in a pan. If you do a tiny bit of coconut oil and then cinnamon, which is an amazing immunity booster, and a tiny pinch of salt, I swear you will never go back. It's an amazing snack if you then want to avoid popcorn, for example. So yeah, that's my opinion. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, my question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And Billy, is that
the question has been answered. By the way, the name is not Billet, it's Marine. Billet is the last name.
Billy.
I was like, Billy. No, it's not Billy.
I have a friend called Billy. That's why it's confusing.
Could be, but no, it's Marine.
Marine.
But then again, thank you for the answer.
You're welcome. I mean, it's definitely a big thing. I mean, hunger, like the concept of hunger isn't just, you know, my stomach's hungry. There's this hunger for like an emotional thing as well. Like, I'm hungry for comfort, I'm hungry for fulfillment. And I think it's really important to connect to our body and realize, like, what am I hungry for? Why am I, you know, because we learn to eat for emotional reasons. I think that's a big thing as well, like as far as health goes, to not always just eat whatever, but just to give yourself a moment to be like, why am I craving that? And sometimes dare to go deeper, to solve the solution, rather than just eating to cover up something that we're actually eating for. I just wanted to put that out there, unrelated to what we've been talking about.
No, but it's a lot of wisdom about food, and it's called wise food. So on time I really crave for like a piece of cheese, or like wanting to put something in my mouth just because I want to. Maybe I can like just sit down and just breathe a bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a holistic way we need to kind of relate to food. How we eat, you know, the mindful part of it, you know, like think the emotional side. like enjoy the process, use all your senses, give yourself time to be grateful before you're eating. So also you like, relax into eating food. Don't use food as just a filler, like quick rush to work. Give yourself time, sit and really enjoy the flavors, and then I think when you go into a plant-based direction as well, you really think about like, where does this ingredient come from? Like, how many people had to put the energy into this ingredient to get it into my plate? You know, the chef, the farmer, all the distribution, and like there's so many steps before food is like on your plate, like to really appreciate that. And I think so if you're really craving, just put something in your mouth, just like give yourself a moment to relax into it and be like, okay, am I hungry? And do I need some sugar? Then I just kind of enjoy what you're also giving yourself, and use food as a way to treat yourself, like gift food to yourself. And I think that's why I love food so much, because it's one of the things we can control, into how we feel and how we relate to ourselves and how we relate to our environment. Because so much goes on in our body that we can't control, and food is one external thing that we choose to put in our body. So if you have a bit of cheese, enjoy it, but also enjoy a fresh apple or whatever, like appreciate every ingredient for what it tastes like, where it comes from. Yeah.
I have a question. You said that recently you got more and more interested about baby food. Can you tell us more about that?
Whoa, yeah. Yeah, it's I'm actually fascinated by like how our palate is influenced by, even when we're just a fetus, what the mother eats, how the mother eats. Before we're born, it's already affecting how we relate to certain ingredients. And children, and when you're born, you're just fed things, so it's a passive thing, but it's already influencing all the bacteria in your stomach, how your immunity, your intolerances, your allergies, like everything is determined by what you're fed by the mother. And then as the kid develops and becomes more kind of aware of its own kind of individuality, food just a really powerful way for kids to stay connected to their environment, like growing food, understanding where things come from. Kids, you can just influence so much, and they have it, you know, whatever you teach them as a kid, they have for life. It's much harder to teach adults new things. If you teach a kid, they've got it for life, you know, so it's that foundation. So I think it's just, especially nowadays with like all the digital life, I think it's crucial that we have our kids love and respect and enjoy nature and what it has to offer, and eating nature is then an even more kind of experienced part of that. And yeah, so I absolutely love inspiring kids to just be fascinated by the colors, the textures, the imagination around every ingredient, growing it, and then cooking it and eating it. So like, if you get the kid to love the pure ingredients, then it's much easier to teach them to cook healthily, because that foundation is set the right way. If you teach kids to only be excited by food that's packaged and printed with bright colors and learned and taught to like be only edible if it looks fun, to see the enjoyment of just a pure ingredient, like, you know, for example, an apple or a broccoli, and be enthusiastic about natural things, is a really important part of respecting the planet and respecting yourself actually as well. Yeah.
Thank you. He's also expressing his upset right now.
Hungry.
Does not want to go to bed. I'm looking for, does it, like, anything you'd like to kind of share with us that we haven't asked you?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk endlessly about these things, but I definitely think a very important message I try and share during workshops of when I cook in the restaurant is to focus on what you're adding to your life and not what you're depriving yourself of. I think that's a really big thing, like enjoying the process of learning new things, enjoying it's really about the approach rather than worrying about what you should or shouldn't eat. Or yeah, I think it's the attitude and that we need to change, and that to enjoy changing that journey rather than worrying about all the rules and restrictions. I feel that really strongly, and using food just as a way to connect to ourselves and our environment, each other. It's just a really beautiful and powerful medium, and there's just so much negativity on it, the shoulds and shouldn't, and we need to go back to the essence of what it is and the effect it has, and use it, see the kind of magic of what food can mean to us. Yeah.
Anybody else has a question?
And if you want, last, is there a book you would recommend that we should read to get more information regarding food and healthy food? And
I really enjoyed a book called First Bite. I can't remember the author. That's really like kind of the influence of like culture and nurture, like the kind of nature or nurture kind of question on how we stand towards food, and the influence of the Western kind of capitalism. And it's like a really interesting kind of anthropological analysis through history of what food means to us. I've really enjoyed reading that. What else could I advise? Oh, well, if it's specifically on immunity, Food Pharmacy is a great one. Really enjoy that. And that's, the focus is on gut health, but it's like written in a playful way, but you get a lot of information and recipes and the theory kind of jumbled up, so you don't feel like it's not heavyweight. It's a very easy read and very inspiring. So that's, the Food Pharmacy is a great one.
okay.
Yeah.
So next week we have your cooking class, same time.
Yes.
Next week, Tuesday, which is on the human system. Like, so you'll communicate with us like roughly the ingredient we should get in advance, and I will email them around.
Yeah, perfect.
Give us a little sense of it.
Well, I mean, for sure, nowadays with the craziness going on in our world at the moment, immunity is just a really big thing. So I just want to kind of show how, instead of like focusing on medication, I just want to kind of, I will give a little theory as well, but the focus will be on gut health and what stimulates the good bacteria in our body, because that completely determines our immune system. So I'm going to be teaching a few techniques that you can then use for different things, rather than just a dish that then after you've cooked that dish 5 times you're bored of. I'm going to try and give you a few basics that you can then use to create lots of different things. There will be some fermentation there as well, so things that have their own life that we can then feed like a Tamagotchi. I don't know if you remember them. You have to feed it every day to keep it alive, and it's a fun project, so I'll be giving some homework as well.
That really sounds great. Well, I don't have specifically more questions. I'm also like very aware that every time I put my cell phone, you hear the screaming.
Yeah. It's part of it.
I guess what I really like about your principle is that there's so much love and joy in how you approach food. And like really what I love is this kind of non-judgmental part of it. It's just like, I really sense that for you, when you're plant-based, it's really out of an expression of love, not of like, this is bad, like meat is bad. It's like, oh, I love you and I love food so much that naturally that led you into being more and more plant-based? I often, like, sometime recently I went past McDonald's and I bought a McFlurry, and right before I saw some chicken nuggets and I was like, think of the chicken you're saving when you go. Like, in a way, like, oh, the love that I have for the animals, to not give in to the craving.
Yeah.
But what I really love is what you said of like, oh, like, rather than kind of looking at what I'm not having, really starting to kind of think of like all the things that I can have, or like that I can play, or like the kind of guilt-free, like, okay, if you crave that, go for it, really go for it, rather than halfway through. And also,
yeah, I mean, it's the same with like even, you know, because you can be really unhealthy vegan. You know, you can just eat pasta and white bread all day. You're not going to be a very happy, healthy person. You know, if you, instead of going, oh, I shouldn't eat white bread, I'd be like, oh, these sourdough, for example, which is so healthy and has so much more nutrition in it. Don't just be like, oh, that's healthy, I'll eat sourdough. Understand, like, that sourdough is like, it's collecting yeast out of the air, of the trees, the plants around us. It's like a really beautiful, poetic side. You can't industrially make sourdough properly. Like the real one with the good crust and the good flavor, that's made by hand. It's like that, you know, it's the real deal. It's got love and energy in it. And to focus on the story behind the ingredients, which again goes back to why I don't buy packaged food, is because I don't feel the love behind it. I don't feel, you know, if someone makes me falafel that they've made at home, I will happily eat something I haven't made myself. It's just the fact that I just get energy mentally away before I even eat it, from food that's made with care and has a story. And I think if you focus on that more and more, it automatically directs you towards a healthier lifestyle. That's why I don't go to McDonald's. I don't get satisfaction out of it, because there's no story, there's no energy in there.
The funny thing is, like, actually, from my reality, is like the local market, most of their food are not organic. It's like majority of it. It's and for me to buy organic food, the most convenient, both in price and convenience, is actually going to the Carrefour, like the big store, like, which I took you, because it's all in one place. And but funny enough, sometimes the organic tomatoes taste less good, they have less flavor than the non-organic one from the market. So that's also something that I'm trying to dance with. And of course, when the season is right here at La Cheraille, we get, you know, we have the food directly coming from the ground. But when I don't have that, I found it a delicate dance between, like, you would think that organic means full of taste, but actually sometimes it's organic and it's just like, nah.
Yeah, no, I think it's important to prioritize, like, yeah, I mean, organic, I don't think necessarily always the label of organic means the best food. Like, if something's made in someone's garden and it hasn't been given the label of organic, which is very difficult to get that label and very expensive, it doesn't mean that the other stuff is not healthy or not good. But for example, I will hardly ever buy a tomato in the middle of the winter from a random supermarket, because it just tastes like shit. It looks light, like it looks kind of orange rather than red, what it should be. And then I'd prefer to really enjoy really great whatever beetroot or something that feels right and comes from the right place. But I think certain ingredients feel really right to be organic. Like an apple, I find really difficult to eat a non-organic apple. And you kind of, especially budget wise, you choose your battles, you know. Just go for the tomato, it tastes the best. But then, for example, for cheese, especially if you are going to have cheese, I mean, I completely stand by it if it has to be organic or come from a very local place, because the story's right, the background's right. So I don't think you have to, again, rule out non-organic stuff, but just use your senses and sense what's right and what's wrong per ingredient and not per category.
Thank you. That was also very useful.
Welcome.
I'll let like, any other question before we get to conclude?
You can always feel free to ask me something throughout the week. Send me a message, but I will be communicating with everyone with what to buy and get ready for the actual cooking workshops. And we can always chat after the cooking or before any questions. And
do
then
you have our email addresses actually?
not the email addresses. I think we need to figure out what the best way is to send everyone.
Could write on the chat channel your email address, and then I will make sure that you get Lily gets your email to let me know.
Yeah. And the other people who will be there joining the class, I'll be able to contact personally via Facebook and Instagram.
And we have a very singing child. I mean, I could continue asking you questions. So, like, I'd like to maybe know a little bit more about the restaurant that you are a chef at in Antwerp. Is that correct? If you can tell us a little bit about that, you know, like the journey, what's food, the philosophy, like, yes, a little bit about it. That would be great.
The restaurant, it's all plant-based. As local or seasonal as possible, and again, I like try and avoid, I don't use any kind of soy, no cashew, no avocado, because trying to show that you can be vegan or plant-based without those ingredients. But it's very much focused on the gourmand, on that French Belgian cuisine, showing that you can really have a big full plate of food and not be hungry afterwards, after, like, it's not just carrots and hummus, but there's so much more story behind it and so much more flavor and fulfillment that you can create than just then it's just a salad. So again, we don't label the fact that it's plant-based or vegan. We don't promote that. You can't tell that it's vegan from the outside, and it's in tiny on our menu because we just make nice food and it just happens to be vegan. So probably about 80% of our customers are not vegan or plant-based. We try and create food that just welcomes everyone, and just so that everyone, whether you're plant-based, you're vegan, vegetarian, gluten intolerant, lactose intolerant, whatever, that you can just all eat together, and it doesn't become like a burden to have a certain to eat in a certain way. So we just try and again focus on the positivity rather than on fixating on the limiting kind of borders of what it is or isn't. So yeah, we're very much tapas based as well. So just everything about sharing. We're a jazz restaurant as well, so we have live jazz every Thursday because it's all about the kind of energy and a lifestyle about it. So going out for a meal doesn't have to be like, oh, knife and fork, really strict kind of rules, but it's very casual energy around it. We do loads of cocktails and natural wines and very local beers, and it's like it's more of a lifestyle restaurant rather than just food to eat. It's more about the energy, the experience, with a philosophy in the background. Yeah, an open kitchen as well, so it's very kind of very personal cooking. It's all cooked with love and care.
Can you maybe tell us, like, what would you like to expand yourself into? Like, what would be your next big game, or the things that you'd like to play on?
So sorry to interrupt. I just want to say thank you, and I'm afraid I have to go. But thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you for joining. Bye.
Bye.
You mean like with the restaurant or in general?
In general.
Well, I've constantly got all these collaborations with people to kind of include food into different industries, because it's such a powerful medium to make people feel good and change people's mindset. So often it's like projects that have to do with, the planet or the animals or kids, or so it's like I get really inspired by working with new people and new places. So I love the restaurants for what it is and it being in one place, but I'm really excited always by the prospect of working with new people in new places and using my love for food to make a difference. But I have a few products that I'm kind of experimenting with to maybe launch. So that's a big kind of focus of mine in the chocolatier direction, because I'm taking a course in chocolatier. So it's a big project that I'm hoping to get investors for and stuff. So that's an exciting one.
That is very
it's really exciting, but it's a process of just like when the time is right. I'm just enjoying learning and creating, and I mean, of course there's also always kind of this burning need to create books and share my ideas and recipes with the world to try and help and inspire, but all in good time. I'm enjoying the process of learning and experimenting.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to pause the video or stop
Yes.
it. And passive thank you.
So welcome. It was really fun.